Yep, I had a fire in my shop. Hi, Dale coming to you from my garage again. And the fire, it happened several months ago during winter before all the COVID pandemic stuff hit. I wasn't going to show anything, I wasn't going to do a video about it, but then I decided there's some good lessons learned here, so I decided I should share. In the video, I'm going to go over what happened, what I did right, what I did wrong, and what am I going to be doing in the future, and a little bit about fire extinguishers. Come on, let's go. It's a beautiful day today, so I thought I'd get comfortable, come out on my deck, shoot the rest of this. Also, I've got some notes so that I don't forget anything. The first and foremost thing that I want to say, and I want to stress this, and I can't stress it enough, that the Mr. Heater Little Buddy, or the Coleman tank of fuel, had zero blame, absolute zero blame. 100% of the blame and fault of this goes to me and only me. So I want to make sure that is perfectly clear. Both of these I've used for years. They've worked really well. Millions of people have used it. This was completely my fault. In case anyone's interested, I'll go ahead and leave links to both of these products in the comments below to check out. But they work really, really well. Again, my fault. So, what happened? Well, it was a winter day. There was a good chill in the air, so I decided I was going to warm up my garage a bit like I've done many, many times before. This little unit isn't really meant for heating up a full 2-car garage, but it does help a little bit, and if I stand right in front of it, I do get a really good blast of warm air, so it's been working great for me for several years. Normally what I would do is I would put it together, start it up, give it about a good 20 minutes or so to get a little bit of the nip out of the air in the garage, heats it up a little bit, enough for me to work. This time was different. I hooked it up, I put it on the ground, and I hit the start button to start it, and then a whoosh of flame came out. Kind of like when you start your gas stove or your gas barbecue, and it doesn't start on the first couple of clicks, and then when it finally does start, you get a bit of a flame, but then it just goes back to nothing. The issue here though is once that happened, and to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, I almost needed to change my pants, but the flame never went away. The flames continued coming out of this at about 12 to 18 inches, so I knew something was wrong. Built into this unit is got a safety device where if it tilts over at a certain degree, it will automatically shut off. I knew that, so I instantly pushed it over, figuring it would shut off. And I did that, and it shut off, but the flames never stopped. In fact, now the flames were up to maybe 24 to 30 inches. It was a good blaze going at this point, so I knew I needed to do something really quick or there was going to be a whole lot of problems. Before I go on with that story to let you know what happened next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I did wrong. The first thing I did wrong was I didn't inspect this tank. I should have noticed that this bend in the nozzle here wasn't right, and I should have just at that point said I'm not going to use it because it's damaged. I didn't do that. I just screwed it on and went ahead as normal. After attaching it, I didn't squirt any soapy water on this to check to make sure that the connection was tight. A lot of you already know that whenever you're working with gas, wherever there's a connection, just spray a little bit of soapy water on it. If it bubbles, you have a leak and don't go any further until you fix that leak. I didn't do that. The next thing I did wrong was I didn't have a fire extinguisher in my garage shop. We do have a fire extinguisher, but it's in the house, so it wasn't readily accessible to me. The fourth thing I did wrong was I had not been doing regular inspections of my fire extinguisher inside of my house. I was very lucky that it was still in working order, but it may not have been, and that would have been tragic. Now, this wasn't all a comedy of errors on my part. I did do some things right, several of them actually. First and foremost, I stayed calm. Like I tell my wife and kids a lot, if you're ever in a hairy predicament, panic and you'll die. So don't panic, stay calm. The other thing I did correctly, which I did every single time I used these, was once I put them together, I put them on my concrete floor of the garage, several feet away from anything that is combustible. So that way, if it did happen, it would be self-contained. The third thing I did correctly was, luckily my driveway was empty, my garage door was open, so I was able to grab my push broom and quickly push it out of the garage into the driveway. But at this point, it was well engulfed and it was burning really, really big. The fourth thing that I did right is, although I hadn't been doing my normal inspections of my fire extinguisher, I knew exactly where it was in the house. So I ran in and grabbed it. Once I ran in and grabbed it and came back out, not only did I know where it was, I had also read the instructions when I first bought the unit, so I was well aware on how to use it, even though I had never used a fire extinguisher before in my life. And the last thing I did correctly was I used proper technique by aiming it at the base of the fire using a sweeping motion, and I emptied it completely into the flame and it was extinguished. The last thing I want to talk about before moving on is, did anything unexpected happen? Of course, other than the fire itself. And actually, there was. After using the fire extinguisher and putting out the fire, I must have inhaled some of the media, and I don't know if it's just me being super sensitive to it, but I found it very difficult to breathe. I could breathe, but it was very difficult to breathe for about 30 to 45 seconds. Again, I stayed really calm, but if it would have gone on for another 10 or 15 seconds, I probably would have dialed 911 and walked over to a neighbor to try to get them to help, because I was really struggling to breathe. I'm not going to get into the science of fire extinguishers or tell you which one you should get, other than get one, or maybe more, depending on the size and setup of your house and shop. I have a type ABC extinguisher, which means it's good for A, trash, wood, and paper, B, liquids, gases, and solvents, and C, electrical equipment. This is your basic home fire extinguisher that can be used in all homes and shops. So, how actually do one of these things really work? I'm sure pretty much most of you already know, or at least have a good idea how they work, but probably few have ever had to use one. In my opinion, these are so inexpensive now, I think it's worth the cost of buying one just so that you can use it one time for practice. That way you can be 100% absolutely certain you know how to use it in case you ever have to. And I sincerely hope you never have to. Most extinguishers are going to work pretty much in the same way, but again, make sure you pre-read the instructions on yours so you know how yours works. But basically, they're going to work like this. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull this ring. Once pulled, it's now ready to be fired. You want to make sure you aim it at the base of the flame, pull the trigger, and then using a sweeping motion, sweep across the entire base of the flame. I'll demonstrate it for you now. Let's go. Come on. Some common questions about fire extinguishers, like, do they expire? Most fire extinguishers don't expire, but that does not mean that they're good forever. They need to be inspected regularly. Well, how often should they be inspected? It's recommended that you inspect your fire extinguishers at least once a month. For businesses, there's actually requirements for both personal and professional inspections. Get with your local county codes if you're running a business. By doing these inspections, there are several things that you can ensure. They are: 1, it's in the correct and agreed to location. Everyone that stays at your house or works in your shop should completely understand where the fire extinguisher is located. 2, nothing's blocking it and it's highly visible. 3, it doesn't have any damage or corrosion. If it does, replace it immediately. 4, it's still completely charged. That means the needle in the green area. If it's not, replace it immediately. And last but not least, number 5, that the pin is correctly sealed and seated, and if it's not, you guessed it, immediately replace it. How do I dispose of my old fire extinguishers? First, most extinguishers are made to be one-time use. Once you use it, you should completely empty it. You can refill some of them, but because the prices have come way down, typically it really isn't that much cheaper, and sometimes it's more expensive to have them refilled instead of just buying a new one. What you should do is put it aside for a day after use, come back the next day, try to use it again to guarantee that it's 100% discharged, and then simply throw it in the trash like all your other garbage. In closing, I was extremely lucky and I realized that. The fire never spread from the heater, so I didn't have any other damage done, but this could have been horrific. I now have a fire extinguisher well placed both in my house and in my garage shop. This whole incident made me start thinking about fire safety throughout the rest of my house. In particular, I'm talking about my fire and smoke detectors. Now, I am already very religious on changing out the batteries regularly. My smoke detectors are hooked up to my electricity line as well as battery backups. So if one goes off, they all go off. I've got that type. I'm in a newer home. I took a closer look at these smoke detectors, and guess what? They have an expiration date, and they expired 5 years ago. Now, most likely, they're probably still good, but for the cost of just 15 or 20 bucks a piece, I'm going to replace them all. I suggest that you take a look at all of your smoke detectors inside of your house, as well as get those fire extinguishers where you need them. See if they expire. At the very least, get on a regular basis of changing the batteries in your smoke detectors every 6 months. That's what I'm going to keep doing. If you have any questions or comments, put them below. I'm wondering, anyone else out there have any close calls with fire? Let me know if you have, and hopefully you didn't have any damage. Until next time, see ya.